Hey everybody, I've got a fun project I think lined up for us this week. I'm calling this one Learning a New Instrument, and specifically we're doing this in GarageBand where we'll be learning a new virtual instrument, so to speak. So the first thing I want you to do is to browse to your tracks screen from wherever you might be in GarageBand. So here are the instruments that I would like you to consider, because I think most of us out here do not play these instruments. The strings category is a good choice if you're curious what's in there. We have our violin, viola, cello, and bass that you can select in that way. Just whichever one you tap on, and then the fingerboard at the bottom represents the strings and the notes that you can play. So the strings option is a good choice. If you've played a stringed instrument, or if you want to branch out a little bit more, you might try bass, which is obviously my instrument, so I'm not going to choose it, because what I'd like you guys to do for this assignment is to try to find an instrument that you don't already play. Guitar is another option, and I think one of the best options are these two world instruments. And the Aru is the one that I'm going to focus on today, but there are some other ones. So ultimately what we're going to be doing in GarageBand is we're going to be learning the basics of how to play one of these instruments and then creating a short song. There's one specific thing I want you to keep in mind. If you're going to get the most out of this project, you're going to need to choose the notes view. You're going to see here on strings where I have an option to select smart strings, notes, or scales. Here's the reason I want you to choose the notes view. If you choose smart strings, you're not really learning that much about how to play the instrument. If I want to play a C chord, I kind of just tap on that C. If I want to let it ring out, I sort of swell up. I tap my finger near the middle and push towards the top. Now obviously if you were making a track and you wanted some nice string chords, this would be the way to go. But for this week, I really want you to try your best to learn how one of these instruments works. And to do that, you're going to need to choose notes view. So whether you're picking strings or bass or guitar or one of these world instruments where you only have a notes view, whatever you pick, we're going to use notes view. And for my demonstration for you, I'm going to choose the Aru, and I've already started a project where I have a loop that I found that I like. So I'm going to pull it up. So that's my loop. One thing I would recommend for you, if you've never played the instrument that you're about to attempt, which hopefully you haven't, I would try to learn a major scale first. You'll see on my screen that the Aru over here on the fingerboard on the top right has a selector where I can choose what sort of scale I want it to play. I'm going to leave that set to off, and I would encourage you to do the same thing. And this is why. If I change it to, let's say, major pentatonic, all of a sudden it's extremely easy to play, which if you're just making a song and want to get something knocked out quick, then fine. But if you're really wanting to learn how these instruments work, I would encourage you to leave that scale setting set to off, and then this instrument's going to be tuned like the instrument actually would be tuned in the real world. Depending on which instrument you've picked, you might also notice at the bottom left there are some different icons, and I don't know what those mean, so I'm going to tap the question mark in the top right of the screen. That's my help, and it lets us know a little bit about what these different icons are going to do. And I can try this grace note one here at the bottom left. If I play a note, there it is, but if I hold the grace note first, sort of slides into it. There's also a trill option, and that one depends on how far you move your thumb away from the middle of the button. There's this horse icon. Don't know how much use I'm going to get out of that. And then probably the one that I'm going to use the most is this vibrato amount. So if I hold it and move my finger to the right, that's pretty nice. So I'm going to turn that help off. I'm going to try to first see if I can learn how to play a major scale on this thing. So I'm just going to pick a note and try to sound out a major scale. I kind of cheated. I learned how to do that before I started the video. But depending on your instrument, it may be kind of tricky. If you're having a lot of problems with this, just literally Google your instrument. So for me, it would be Eru, E-R-H-U, and then major scale. And you should be able to find some resources out there. Generally on stringed instrument, there's dots in certain places on the neck. And that's what I've sort of memorized is there's certain notes that happen on the dots, and there's certain notes that happen in between the dots. So now that I know how to play a major scale, so I'm going to take a moment and just sort of improvise and see if I can find some notes or some little melodic ideas that might work to start building a song with this instrument. Alright, I liked a couple of those ideas. So I'm going to try recording a little bit of this. And if I make a mistake, I'm just going to keep going. Alright, I did an okay job there, but I clearly played a note or two that definitely wasn't in the scale and sounded pretty wrong to me. So let's listen back to that. Alright, so a few mistakes in there. One other thing too that I notice now that I'm listening to it is that I think that instrument's too loud. So if I swipe on that instrument panel over to the right, I can find my volume slider and turn that area down a little bit and see if that blends a little better. Probably a little too soft now. Alright, so what about those wrong notes? Well, option one is I could play it again and try to record it correctly. Option two is that I can double tap on that region and click edit. When we're in our edit view, you're going to see something sort of similar to GarageBand Desktop, and you can pinch, just use your thumbs. You can pinch on the X or Y axis to get more notes to fit. Essentially, the way this is laid out is on the left side, you'll see there's different notes, like different lanes for each note. Here I can see at the bottom of my screen G, and then A, and then B, and then C. Obviously, those in-between notes are the sharps and flats. All of these green rectangles represent pitches that you played, and I would encourage you to resist just quantizing everything you just played. Unless you're having a lot of trouble playing things in time, what I would recommend you do is just fix notes that were wrong. So let's listen to it. We can click play and we'll be able to quickly see what note jumps out as being incorrect. So you notice we have a problem. is that for each one of these rectangles there are multiple pitches, and that's because on the arrow you slide around with your finger and everything is played like a gliss. So that's all registering as one MIDI event, unfortunately. So if you're playing a melody like that, you would just need to re-record it. So what I'm going to do this time is play it without the glisses. In case I mess up, I can go back and fix. So the nice thing about playing it the way that I just did means that every note that I played is represented by a different MIDI region. The bad thing is that it doesn't sound authentic to how the arrow is normally played, but for our purposes this week, this might be the way to go, because even though it doesn't sound exactly quote unquote correct or authentic, it's going to be much easier to fix and edit. So I can click at the beginning of my region and click play. We can hear the notes that I played. So if I really wanted to fix these timings, I could drag them and put them right on the grid. Those don't really bother me so much. I wouldn't overdo it. But let's say that fourth note I didn't like there. That would be a major 7 in our scale. So what if I want it to go ba ha ha ha, then back up to the same note? Let's try that. So again, all you have to do in this edit view is just drag and drop your different regions around. If you hold near the end of a region, you can stretch it. You have to kind of tap it first and then tap again, hold and drag. To change pitch, you just tap and move it up and down. And then to change it where it falls in time, you just slide it. And if you want to have it perfectly quantized, you put it on the grid. I would not do that for all of your notes, otherwise it's going to sound kind of robotic. So that at least gets your feet wet, so to speak, on how to learn a new instrument on GarageBand. For your project, what I would like you to do is build a 32 measure song using your new instrument. So your new instrument doesn't have to play constantly throughout. It doesn't have to start recording at measure 1 and finish recording at measure 32. And I would encourage you to try different loops. I just loaded up one loop over and over just to sort of cut to the chase. But ultimately, to get the most out of this project, I would encourage you to use multiple loops, and I would embrace your instrument's role. So is it a melody instrument? Is it a chordal instrument? Is it a bass instrument? And I would go with that. So that should have you all set with learning a new instrument. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next time.